Her eyes lingered on his hands as he tightened the last bolt. The words slipped out before she could stop them. "You're exactly my type." He froze, lifting his gaze to hers. The room went silent. For a heartbeat, neither moved. Then his voice came low, careful. "I'm not sure you really know what that means." Charlotte Whitfield had built her life like a closing argument. Clean, controlled, and devastatingly persuasive. The penthouse at Riverlight Tower reflected it back at her in glass and light. A panoramic sweep of Nashville's skyline, a slab of marble long enough to double as a conference table, curated art so precise it felt like punctuation. She moved through it in a fitted black dress that hugged her thick, curvy frame like a promise, her heels tapping a metronome of duty across polished floors. Her calendar ruled from the quartz island, filings, calls, a client's contract up for renewal, dinner at the Belmont Club she did not want to attend. Her mother's text glowed on the screen like a courtroom exhibit. "Don't be late." Alexander Pike will be there. His family sits on 3 hospital boards. Smile, mean it, and wear something that photographs well. Charlotte lifted her eyes to the floor-to-ceiling windows and let the message expire on the lock screen. She should have been thrilled. She always knew the rules. Appear, impress, accept the right arm. But something inside her, stubborn and newly awake, pushed back. The feeling had no words. It was more like the low hum of a string pulled too tight. The intercom buzzed. "Premier deliveries for Whitfield," a voice announced, tinny and brisk. "Send them up," she said, smoothing the dress over her hips, catching her reflection in the steel. Professional. Perfect. Untouchable. The elevator chimed. 2 men stepped out in navy uniforms. One, thick around the middle with a clipboard tucked like a badge. He introduced himself as Peter. The other rolled a dolly balancing long wrapped panels and a headboard shrouded in quilted fabric. He was taller, broader in the shoulders, the kind of strength that looked unbothered by weight. Dark skin, close-cropped hair, quiet eyes that took in the space once and seemed to understand it. "Good afternoon, Miss Whitfield," the supervisor said, the practiced charm almost audible. "Italian bed frame, king, plus slatted base. We'll take excellent care of it." Charlotte nodded. "Primary bedroom, through there." She gestured down the hall, then lingered, because the motion in the room had shifted. The quiet man had already unwrapped the first panel with a patience that felt like respect, not delay. He lifted the headboard without the clumsy theatricality of a lift. It looked, absurdly, like the bed wanted to go where he was taking it. "Malik," Peter said, flipping a page and positioning himself at the edge of the living room like a foreman in a play. "Lid installer. He's the best." Malik acknowledged the introduction with a nod and moved past her, the quilted fabric draped over his forearms. Charlotte caught the faint scent of wood oil and lemon cleaner as he passed. Work and care. The contrast against the sterile chill of her penthouse made her feel overly perfumed, like a bouquet that had outlived the party. She followed them toward the bedroom, telling herself she was protecting her investment, not her curiosity. "It was custom," she heard herself say. "I don't want the legs scuffed on setup." "Won't happen," Malik said, not looking up, setting the headboard against the wall with the tender decisiveness of a second landing. His voice had a calm center. "We'll anchor to studs. No wobble. No drama." Peter laughed as if he'd told a joke. "No drama?" he echoed, writing nothing on the clipboard. "I'll start the paperwork." Charlotte stepped out of the way while Malik unwrapped hardware. She liked competence. She recognized it like a bird recognizes the sky. Papers rustled, a tape measure flicked and snapped, pencil marks bloomed on blue painter's tape. Her phone vibrated again. Another text from her mother. "Don't drift. These chances matter." She turned the screen face down. "Do you want the headboard centered on the window, on the wall? If I center to the window, you get symmetry with the city. If I center to the wall, you get symmetry with doors." "Window," she said, then, unexpectedly, smiled. "Symmetry with the city." He smiled back, quick and small, and did not make her explain. Charlotte's chest did something unfamiliar in the space between inhale and exhale. Peter talked at her about signatures. She signed where he pointed. When he excused himself to check on a job in Green Hills, he drifted toward the elevator with the gravitational pull of someone who had nothing else left to do. "Malik will finish up," he said, almost as a benediction. "He's quicker by himself anyway." The apartment grew quieter when the doors closed. Charlotte stood in her doorway while Malik marked and drilled, vacuumed dust as he created it, touched the wood as though he owed it an introduction to the room. The frame came together with a logic she could feel. Something loosened inside her that wasn't discipline and wasn't surrender, just a recognition that care born of practice softens the air around it. "Do you always work this way?" she asked, meaning the gentleness, the quiet, the refusal to treat her space like a battlefield. "I don't like to have to come back," he said, "so I get it right today. That sounds like my job." He gave a small huff of acknowledgement, something like a laugh that didn't need to turn into one. "You an attorney?" She blinked, amused and for a second seen. "Is it that obvious?" "You keep your pens in a line," he said, glancing toward the nightstand where she had set them, "and you've checked your watch 3 times and haven't left the room." She felt the flush crawl up her neck. Observant. "Comes with not wanting to replace floors," he said. "You learn to see how things sit before they fall." Her phone rang. She didn't have to look to know who it was. "Give me a second," she said, stepping into the hallway, then hitting accept. "Hey, Mom." Victoria Whitfield's voice carried the bright lacquer of someone who expected the world to arrange itself. "You got the dress I sent?" "I got it," Charlotte said, watching dust settle in the sunlight like a quiet applause for the work underway. "It's stunning." "And appropriate," her mother added. "Try not to be late tonight. Alexander is very good for you. For us." A pause, the faint clink of glass over slate. "What's that noise?" "Delivery," Charlotte said. "They're installing the bed." "Can't the help handle that?" her mother asked, light as air, heavy as stone. "I don't want you distracted before dinner." The word lodged in Charlotte like a pebble in a shoe, small, unignorable. She looked back at the bedroom and saw Malik bent over a joint, tightening, testing, tightening again. "I'll call you later," she said, voice even. She ended the call. It took a moment for the apartment to exhale. In the doorway she felt oddly unable to step forward or backward. Malik had not paused for the phone or the tone it carried. He eased the slatted base into place and, after a final alignment check, stepped back. "Want to test it?" he asked. "The bed?" The question came out breathless, and she hated herself for it. He kept his expression steady, professional, kind. The stability. Charlotte crossed the room, aware of the way her curves moved beneath the dress, of the line of his gaze, polite and unwaveringly fixed on the frame, not her. She pressed a palm to the edge and leaned her weight. The frame didn't so much hold as it welcomed. No creak, no give. A decision you could trust. "This is perfect," she said, too softly. "I'll dress the base and wrap the corners to prevent tears," he said, already moving. When he took the last strip of painter's tape off the floor, the room felt finished in a way the art had never made it feel, like it finally had something to anchor itself to. He coiled the vacuum cord. She watched his hands. They were careful hands, hands that had memorized edges and had learned how not to bruise them. She had spent years telling herself she didn't notice hands. "Water?" she asked, and the word carried more than hospitality. "Appreciate it," he said. He took the glass gently, as if he thought softness might be contagious. He drank and set it down on a coaster without looking to see if there was one. "Anything else you want adjusted before I secure this fully? Once it's anchored, it'll take effort to undo." She should have said no. Instead, the truth slipped and fell into the room, bright and graceless. "You're exactly my type," she said. Silence arrived like fog, slow everywhere. Charlotte felt the blood rush behind her ears. She could hear, absurdly, the faint hum of the refrigerator 3 rooms away. Malik's eyes lifted to hers. They were not startled. They were not amused. They were deeply, devastatingly careful. He set the glass down. The small ring of moisture it left on the coaster felt like an autograph. "I'm not sure what you mean," he said, and the respect in the sentence made her feel worse. Charlotte swallowed. The correct answer waited at the edge of her tongue like a witness you didn't want to call. "I mean..." She cleared her throat, reaching for the script. "I mean your work. Your work is my type. Professional. Exact." He nodded once, accepting the revision without pretending to believe it. He returned to the bed and tightened a final bolt. The wrench clicked with finality. The sound seemed to travel through the frame and into the bones of the building. He gathered his tools. She watched his shoulders. The easy economy of movement that came from doing something long enough to know where the wasted seconds hide. "I'll leave the warranty card on the nightstand," he said. "If anything loosens, which it won't, call the number." "Malik," she said, his name surprising them both, landing between them like something fragile and true. "Do you?" She stopped, reset. "Do you ever take private restoration work?" He paused at the doorway. Then he pulled a business card from the side pocket of his tool bag and placed it by the warranty. It was simple. No logo, just a name, a number, and below it, in small letters, Johnson Custom Restorations. Evenings and Sundays, he said, when the work matters. Her phone chimed. Another message from her mother flashed and faded. Charlotte looked at the card, at the bed that made the room feel like a promise kept, at the man who had built it like he knew what she would need from it. Not sleep, not exactly, but rest from pretending. "Thank you," she said. He nodded, eyes steady on hers for one small, dangerous second, and then he was gone. The soft thud of the front door, the private hush of the corridor, the distant, swallowed chime of the elevator descending. The apartment was very quiet. Charlotte stood at the edge of the bed and pressed her palm flat to the wood. It was solid in a way she had not allowed anything to be in years. Her mother's text pulsed again. She didn't pick up the phone. She picked up the card. And, for the first time that day, she let herself imagine a life that wasn't symmetrical to the walls. The next morning, Charlotte Whitfield woke to sunlight streaming through the sheer curtains of her penthouse bedroom. The new Italian bed frame supported her mattress like a promise, steady, silent, and strong. It should have been a symbol of victory, another curated possession in a life designed to showcase precision and success. Yet when she opened her eyes, her gaze went not to the skyline, not to the framed degrees on her wall, but to the slim white card resting on her nightstand. Johnson Custom Restorations. Her fingers brushed it like contraband. She told herself she had kept it only in case of warranty issues, but the lie was thin as tissue. Every time she glanced at the neat black lettering, her pulse betrayed her. It wasn't the bed itself that had shaken her world. It was the way Malik Johnson had built it, with patience, with respect, with an authenticity she rarely encountered in her marble and glass orbit. Her phone buzzed, shattering the moment. She flinched, then forced composure before answering. "Charlotte?" Her mother's voice clipped through the speaker, cool and commanding as ever. "You left dinner early last night. Marcus Pike said he hardly had a chance to know you. He talked at me for an hour about tax codes and his father's board seats," Charlotte replied, rubbing her temple. "I didn't feel well." Her mother's sigh crackled with disappointment. "Marcus is a Whitfield-level match. You need to prioritize these opportunities. A man like him secures not only your future, but the family's standing. You can't afford to alienate men like Marcus." The word afford stung more than it should have. Charlotte ended the call with polite excuses, then sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the card. The truth pressed in. She had spent years constructing a perfect image. Whitfield partner, curvy but polished, wealthy, connected. Yet beneath the shell she was restless, hungry for something she hadn't been able to name until yesterday. It looked a lot like a tall man with calm eyes who treated her overpriced furniture like sacred craft. That afternoon, she attempted to drown herself in briefs. Her desk was lined with case files stacked in military precision, her pens aligned like soldiers awaiting orders. Yet the words blurred. Malik's voice replayed instead, deep and certain. "I don't like to come back, so I get it right today." When her assistant entered to ask about the Reynolds contract, Charlotte realized she'd been staring at the same page for 15 minutes. "Reschedule for tomorrow," she muttered, hearing the brittle edge in her own voice. By evening, the silence in the apartment pressed heavy on her chest. She walked the halls, glass of wine in hand, restless in a way that no client dinner, no social gala could soothe. On instinct, her gaze landed once more on the card. Before she could lose nerve, she picked it up and dialed. "Johnson Restorations," Malik's voice came, steady, professional. "Malik, she hesitated. "It's Charlotte Whitfield, the bed client." A pause, then the softest shift in tone, more personal than professional. "Yes, Miss Whitfield, how's the frame holding?" "Perfect," she said too quickly. "Not a sound, that's not why I'm calling." She swallowed, nerves prickling. "I wanted to ask if you take consultation work. Restoration. I have a piece. Piece. My grandmother's dresser, cherrywood. It's been in storage for years. I thought about refinishing, but... She exhaled, aware she was babbling. I'd like it done right. Another pause, weighted but not dismissive. I could look at it, Malik said. When's good for you? Tomorrow evening, after work. All right, text me the address. Her heart kicked like a drumline when she hung up. This was business. Strictly business. She repeated it until she half believed it. The following evening, she opened the penthouse door to find him again. This time not in uniform, but in a fitted grey Henley and dark jeans that outlined the strength she had only glimpsed before. He carried a small toolkit slung casually in one hand. Charlotte felt suddenly overdressed in her silk blouse and pencil skirt. She had meant to project control. Instead, she felt transparent. The dresser's in storage, she said, leading him down the hall. I thought I'd show you photos. Malik studied the images she pulled up on her phone, leaning closer. His scent, clean soap, faint wood oil, cut through the sterile air of her penthouse. He scrolled with careful fingers, his brow furrowing as though the scratches and faded finish were battle scars worth honouring. Solid piece, he murmured. Hand-cut dovetails. Whoever made this knew what they were doing. It just needs patience. Her throat tightened. Like you gave my bed. His eyes flicked to hers, calm but searching. That's my work ethic, Miss Whitfield. Doesn't matter if it's a king bed or a cracked dresser. She wanted to say more, but her phone buzzed again. Her mother's name flashed. Charlotte silenced it, pulse racing. You're ignoring that? Malik asked, voice low. Yes, she admitted. For a long beat, he studied her face. Then he set her phone gently on the counter, away from reach. You live in a world where everything is noise. That dresser? It's quiet work. Wood doesn't lie to you. It doesn't care who your family knows. The words cracked something inside her, sharp as glass. What if I'm tired of living in noise? Malik didn't smile. He didn't flirt. He simply said, then you have to decide if you're willing to pay what quiet costs. Later, when he left with measurements jotted in his notebook, Charlotte stood at the door longer than necessary. She had invited him here under the guise of business, but the truth hovered heavy in the air. She wasn't just drawn to his skill. She was drawn to him. The way he saw beyond surfaces. The way he refused to treat her as untouchable. The way he made her question why she'd spent her life performing for rooms full of people who only applauded themselves. Her phone buzzed again. Dinner. Tomorrow. Alexander Pike. Confirm. Charlotte deleted the text without replying. She walked back to the bedroom, where the bed stood solid, unshakable. She pressed her palm against the frame and whispered, What am I doing? The silence answered with a steadiness she couldn't ignore. She was beginning to unravel the veneer. And beneath it, something dangerous and real waited. Charlotte Whitfield had spent most of her 27 years attending the right dinners, shaking the right hands, and smiling the right smile. She had learned early that the Whitfield name opened doors, but it was her discipline and careful polish that kept them open. So why did she spend Thursday afternoon with her phone hidden in her desk drawer, pulse thudding each time it buzzed? She was avoiding her mother's reminders about Alexander Pike, avoiding client emails, avoiding everything except the single text she had not yet answered. Malik, listening room cafe. Thursday, 8. If you're serious. The message sat on her screen like a dare. When 7:30 arrived, she dressed with an urgency she couldn't explain. Not the emerald cocktail dress her mother would expect, not the trim blazer she wore to court, but a sapphire wrap dress that hugged her curvy hips and revealed just enough cleavage to make her feel dangerous. She slipped into heels, stared at herself in the mirror, and almost laughed at the absurdity of it all. A Whitfield at a music cafe on Music Valley Drive? It sounded like a scandalous headline in the society pages. Her driver wasn't an option. Gossip travelled faster than traffic on Interstate 40. Instead, she ordered a rideshare, sitting in the back seat like a woman sneaking out of her own life. The cafe was nothing like the marble dining rooms of the Belmont Club. Its wood-panelled walls were covered in framed posters of local artists. The scent of barbecue mingled with beer and the faint musk of guitar cases. Low lights pooled over small tables, and on the stage a man with a weathered voice strummed a guitar that sounded like heartbreak itself. Charlotte froze just inside the door. the din of conversation pressing against her composure. She had never been in a place like this. Didn't think you'd come. She turned, and there he was. Malik in dark jeans and a button-down shirt, sleeves rolled to reveal forearms dusted with saw marks. Out of uniform, he looked like the space itself, comfortable, grounded, completely at ease. "I said I would," she replied, trying for confidence. "Most people in your circle say a lot of things," he said quietly, then gestured toward a corner table. "This way." They sat across from each other, the small table between them like neutral ground. Charlotte ordered wine. Malik asked for sweet tea. When the server left, silence stretched for a beat. "You don't have to prove anything," Malik said, his tone even. "If you came just to prove to yourself you could, that's fine. But I don't need another experiment in rebellion." The words stung. "You think I came here to make you some kind of project? I don't know why you came," he admitted. "That's why I invited you, to see if you'd stay." Charlotte leaned back, heart pounding. "I came because yesterday I realized something. I spend my life in rooms where people pretend to care about justice, but only protect their own wealth. You're the first person in a long time who didn't play along. You looked me in the eye and told me the truth." His gaze softened slightly, though his posture remained careful. "Truth isn't always safe. Neither is living in a lie." The band shifted. A new voice filled the room, husky and raw. Conversation dimmed. For a few minutes they listened together in silence. Charlotte sipped her wine, Malik tapped his finger to the rhythm, and something in the space between them eased. "What made you want to do restoration?" she asked finally. Malik's eyes lit, not in the polite way she was used to, but with something genuine. "My grandfather, he was a carpenter, could take a broken chair and make it stronger than new. Said wood carried memory. If you respected it, it would teach you patience. That stuck with me." Charlotte smiled faintly. "Sounds a lot like law. If you respect precedent, you can shape it into something lasting." "Difference is," Malik countered, "law serves whoever pays. Wood doesn't care who you are." The bluntness hit her harder than expected. She set her glass down. "You think I don't know that? You think I'm proud of fighting battles for men like Marcus Pike?" Malik tilted his head, studying her. "Then why do it?" "Because it's the only path I was allowed to take." The confession slipped out before she could stop it. "Because when you're a Whitfield, you don't get to choose. You play the role written for you." "And now?" "And now," Charlotte said, her voice low, "I'm sitting in a cafe with a man I barely know, wondering why it feels more real than any gala I've ever attended." For the first time that night, Malik smiled, small, quiet, but enough to soften the edges of his reserve. They talked for hours. About music, about neighborhoods Charlotte had never set foot in, about Malik's dream of opening a restoration studio where apprentices could learn not just skill but dignity. Charlotte confessed how empty it felt to climb a ladder that only led back into the same gilded room. At one point their hands brushed across the table. She expected him to pull away. He didn't. He let the contact linger, warm and solid, before withdrawing with careful control. "This isn't easy, Charlotte," he said, using her first name for the first time. "If you walk out that door tomorrow and pretend tonight never happened, I won't hold it against you. But if you keep showing up, understand that people in your world will talk, and mine will notice too." She swallowed hard. "What if I don't care?" "You will," he said softly. "Everyone does eventually. The question is whether you care enough to stay anyway." When the music ended, they stepped outside into the cool Tennessee night. The city lights shimmered across the Cumberland River. For a moment neither moved. "Thank you," Charlotte said finally, "for inviting me here, for letting me see this part of you." Malik nodded, his expression unreadable. "Thank you for coming. Most don't." He started to turn away, but Charlotte reached out, her fingers brushing his arm. He stilled, glanced back, and in that suspended second she saw the conflict in his eyes, attraction tempered by caution, longing tethered to discipline. "I'll be here again next week," he said at last. "If you want to come, you know where to find me." Then he walked into the night, leaving Charlotte on the sidewalk with her heels clicking against concrete, her pulse racing louder than the traffic on Music Valley Drive. For the first time in her life, Charlotte Whitfield felt she was standing on the edge of something not orchestrated, not scripted, something dangerous, messy, and real. She couldn't stop smiling. Charlotte Whitfield woke to the shrill ring of her phone before dawn. For a moment, half dreaming, she thought it might be Malik calling. But when she fumbled across the nightstand and pressed accept, the clipped tone of her mother's voice dragged her back into reality. "Where were you last night?" Victoria Whitfield demanded. "Alexander Pike said you never showed. Do you realize how humiliating that was? He is considering an appointment to the State Bar Association, Charlotte. You cannot afford to alienate him." Charlotte sat up, the sheets pooling at her waist, her curvy figure outlined against the pale light creeping in through the curtains. She rubbed her temple. "I had other plans, Mother. Other plans." The phrase cracked like a gavel. "Do you even hear yourself? Our family's reputation depends on your presence at these events. People are talking already, wondering why you keep declining suitable matches. What exactly were you doing that was more important?" Charlotte thought of Malik's steady eyes across the cafe table, of his hands sketching plans for his restoration studio on a napkin, of the music that still pulsed faintly in her chest. "I was listening to music," she said finally. "Music?" Her mother's disbelief was acidic. "You skipped dinner with the Pikes for some bar band? Charlotte, this isn't about amusement. This is about alliances. About the Whitfield name. Don't make me remind you what we've built." "I don't need reminding," Charlotte said, and for the first time in her life, she ended the call without waiting for permission. Her heart hammered as she set the phone down. She had broken an unspoken rule. Whitfields did not hang up. She stood at the window, gazing at the Nashville skyline she once thought meant freedom. Instead, it looked like glass bars around her life. The following evening, she tried to resume the role. She slipped into a velvet sheath dress, painted her lips a commanding red, and attended a fundraiser at the Belmont Club. The chandeliers glittered, bourbon flowed, and old money buzzed like bees around honey. Alexander Pike was there, polished, predictable, speaking about tax reform with the same vigour most men reserved for sports scores. Charlotte smiled where expected, nodded where required, but inside, a hollowness spread like frost. The conversation skimmed surfaces, all performance, no substance. At one point, Alexander touched her elbow lightly and said, "My family has been waiting for the chance to properly welcome you into our circle." She heard herself reply, "I'm already in a circle, Alexander. I just don't know if I want to keep walking it." His puzzled look followed her as she excused herself, slipping out onto the veranda. She breathed in the cold night air, desperate for oxygen that wasn't perfumed with politics and power. Her phone buzzed again. This time the message was from Malik. "Workshop tomorrow. 7 p.m. Stop by if you want to see what I mean when I say wood carries memory." Charlotte exhaled, tension bleeding out of her. The choice felt obvious and terrifying. The next evening she found herself outside a converted garage in East Nashville. The building was plain, paint flaking, but warm light spilled from the open door. Inside, the scent of sawdust and varnish wrapped around her like an embrace. Malik stood at a workbench, sleeves rolled, a strip of sandpaper in his hand. He looked up as she entered, surprise flickering into quiet approval. "You actually came. You keep saying that like you don't expect me to. Because most people don't, not when it means crossing this far from downtown." Charlotte glanced around. The space was filled with half-finished projects. A rocking chair stripped to its bones, a table scarred with cigarette burns waiting for rebirth, picture frames stacked like promises. Malik's movements were fluid, confident. Here, he wasn't a delivery worker. He was a craftsman, a creator. "Show me," she said softly. He guided her to the workbench. "This dresser drawer's from a 1940s set, veneers peeling. Most people would toss it, but the joints are still solid." He placed her hand against the wood. "Feel it. Underneath the scratches, it still holds." Charlotte's fingers traced the grain. She felt the ridges, the smoothness where time had worn it down. Unexpectedly, her throat tightened. "It's beautiful." Malik studied her, his expression unreadable. "So are you." The words hung in the air, bold and fragile. Charlotte's breath caught. For a heartbeat, the workshop seemed suspended outside time, the hum of the city, the pressure of her family, the weight of expectation, all muted. But Malik stepped back, setting the sandpaper down with deliberate control. "I need you to understand," he said, voice low. "If you're here because you're curious, that's one thing. If you're here because you're serious, that's another. People like your mother don't forgive women who cross lines. People like my neighbours don't forget when someone from your world uses us for entertainment." Charlotte's heart ached at the tension in his voice. "You think I'd use you? I think you don't know yet what you're risking." She swallowed hard, stepping closer. "Then teach me." Over the next hour, Malik showed her how to strip veneer, how to sand with the grain, how to listen for the tone of a hammer against wood. Charlotte's manicure chipped, her silk blouse gathered dust, but she didn't care. For the first time, she wasn't performing. She was learning. At one point, their hands overlapped on the drawer. Sawdust clung to his skin, brushed against hers. She looked up, and the intensity in his gaze made her shiver. Slowly, as if testing the weight of the decision, Malik slid his fingers between hers. "You don't belong here," he murmured, but he didn't let go. "Maybe this is where I was supposed to be all along," Charlotte whispered back. Their lips nearly met when the sharp buzz of her phone broke the moment. She pulled it from her pocket. Another message from her mother. "We need to talk. Now. Dinner tomorrow." No excuses. Malik saw the name flash across the screen. His jaw tightened. He pulled his hand back and returned to sanding. "That's what I mean," he said. "Your world doesn't let go. It'll drag you back every time." Charlotte's eyes burned. "And what if I don't want to go back? Then you'll have to decide what you're willing to lose." The following night, Charlotte sat at a long oak table at the Belmont Club, her mother across from her, Alexander Pike at her side. She wore pearls, smiled at the right moments, and felt nothing. Alexander leaned close, whispering about a charity gala, while her mother's approving eyes tracked her every move. But Charlotte's mind wasn't in the room. It was in a workshop that smelled of sawdust, with a man who held her hand as if it mattered, who looked at her as if she were more than a polished facade. As the dinner dragged on, a storm built inside her. By dessert, she couldn't take it anymore. She pushed her chair back, the scrape loud enough to turn heads. "Charlotte," her mother hissed. "Where are you going?" "Somewhere I can breathe," she said simply, and walked out. She drove herself this time, straight across town until the familiar glow of Malik's workshop came into view. He was inside, bent over a project, sleeves rolled, focused and steady. When she stepped through the doorway, he looked up. Surprise flickered across his face, but he didn't speak. Charlotte crossed the floor, heart hammering, and stopped inches from him. "I'm tired of living a life that isn't mine," she whispered, "and I don't care who disapproves." Malik's breath caught. His hands, rough with sawdust, brushed her cheek. "Then you'd better mean it, Charlotte, because once you cross this line, there's no going back." "I know," she whispered, leaning into his touch, and this time, when their lips met, she didn't pull away. Charlotte woke with her cheek pressed against Malik's chest, the steady rise and fall of his breathing, lulling her in a way she had never felt in her life. His workshop still smelled faintly of sawdust and varnish, though the tools had been tidied, the lights dimmed. A blanket had been pulled over them at some point, though she couldn't remember when. All she remembered was the certainty of his lips on hers, the weight of his arms, the grounding truth that for once she was exactly where she wanted to be, without apology. But reality seeped back in with the light of dawn. She eased upright, brushing dust from her dress, fingers trembling as if her body knew the enormity of what she had done before her mind could accept it. She wasn't supposed to be here. Her mother would call, and when she realized Charlotte hadn't returned home, the fallout would begin. Malik stirred, opening his eyes slowly. He looked at her without surprise, as though he'd already prepared himself for this morning. "You don't have to run," he murmured. "I'm not running," Charlotte whispered, though she wasn't certain it was true. "I'm thinking." "Thinking's fine," Malik said, sitting up, his strong frame stretching in the early light. "As long as you're honest about what you decide. I won't be your secret, Charlotte. Not a rebellion, not a story you tell yourself when you're tired of the club circuit." Her chest ached at the steadiness of his words. "That's not what this is." He studied her, his dark eyes unreadable but gentle. "Then prove it, not to me, to yourself, to them." Charlotte didn't answer. She left with his card clenched in her hand, his scent clinging to her skin, and the heaviness of choice pressing down with each step. By the time she reached her penthouse, her phone had exploded with missed calls and texts. Her mother's number filled the screen like a summons. Charlotte ignored them all until finally, with a weary sigh, she dialed back. "Where have you been?" Victoria Whitfield's voice cracked like a whip. The entire club was whispering. "Alexander Pike said you stormed out like a child. Do you have any idea the damage you've done?" Charlotte closed her eyes, pressing her back against the cool glass of her window. "I know exactly what I've done, Mother. I chose not to suffocate for another evening." "Don't be dramatic. You are a Whitfield. That name comes with obligations. You cannot simply walk away because you're bored." "It's not boredom," Charlotte snapped, surprising herself with the steel in her voice. "It's exhaustion. It's emptiness. I've spent years playing your game, climbing your ladder, smiling at men who bore me to death while pretending it matters. For what? So you can tell your friends at the club that your daughter is properly placed?" Victoria's silence was icy. Then, slowly, she said, "You sound just like your father. He was always chasing things beneath him, always threatening what we built. And look how that ended. Alone. Don't repeat his mistakes." Charlotte's throat tightened. She had barely known her father before he left, but his absence had been the family's greatest cautionary tale. Now her mother was wielding it at anyone's mistakes, Charlotte said, voice trembling but fierce. "For once, I'm choosing for myself. If you continue down this path, you'll destroy your career, your reputation, everything we've sacrificed for. That man you're seeing, do you think he'll shield you from the consequences? He will cost you everything." Charlotte's breath caught. The word man dripped with disdain, though her mother hadn't said Malik's name. Somehow she knew. Somehow she always knew. "Maybe he's not the cost," Charlotte whispered. "Maybe he's the reward." Her mother's gasp was sharp. "Charlotte, listen to me carefully. If you do this, if you humiliate us this way, you will no longer have a place in this family. You'll be on your own." Charlotte ended the call. Her hands shook, but not from fear. For the first time, she felt a strange, liberating clarity. That evening, she returned to Malik's workshop. He looked up from his bench, surprise flashing across his face, then softening into something warmer when he saw the resolve in her eyes. "She gave you the ultimatum," he said. "She did," Charlotte answered, stepping closer, "and I made my choice." Malik put down the chisel in his hand. "Charlotte, don't tell me it's too risky," she cut in. "Don't tell me I don't know what I'm doing. I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm tired of being a piece of furniture in someone else's house, polished, displayed, but lifeless. I want to be where things are made, where things matter, with you." For a moment, silence filled the workshop, broken only by the hum of the city outside. Then Malik closed the distance, his hand brushing her cheek. "This won't be easy," he said, his voice low. "People will talk. Doors will close. Some days, you'll wonder if it was worth it." Charlotte leaned into his touch, her eyes fierce. "Then remind me on those days. Remind me why I walked out of that club and walked into your world instead." His lips curved into the faintest smile. "You might be stronger than you think." She kissed him then, not tentative or hesitant, but with the full force of a woman claiming her own life. His arms wrapped around her, grounding her, steadying her, and for the first time in years, she felt whole. Weeks later, whispers did spread. Partners at her firm eyed her with suspicion. Invitations from elite circles thinned. Her mother stopped calling. Yet Charlotte found herself happier, sanding a dresser in Malik's shop, sawdust in her hair, than she had ever been beneath chandeliers. One evening, after hours of work, she collapsed against the finished piece, laughing, her curves smudged with dust. Malik wiped her cheek with his thumb, leaving a streak of clean skin behind. "You're getting better," he said. "I had a good teacher," she replied. In that moment, Charlotte realized she had already answered the question Malik had asked weeks ago. Was she curious, or was she serious? She was serious. Deadly serious. Enough to lose the world she had been raised in. Enough to choose the man who had shown her a different one. And for the first time, that cost felt like freedom.